Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your street, your neighborhood, even your own family, no longer exist in the same world as you. Imagine knowing that the people you love are just a few steps away, yet those steps can never be taken again. That a wall of concrete, barbed wire, and armed soldiers has suddenly decided your fate. This is the story of Berlin, a city torn in half, not by geography, but by fear, ideology, and power. When World War II ended in 1945, Germany lay in ruins. Bombed-out buildings, shattered homes, families searching for loved ones in the rubble. The entire nation was exhausted. The Allies, the United States, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union divided the defeated country into 4 occupation zones. Berlin, even though it lay deep inside the Soviet-controlled territory, was also split into 4 parts. At first, this arrangement was meant to be temporary. Nobody imagined that a simple administrative decision would someday carve a wound directly through people's lives. Very quickly, the war's old alliances faded. The Soviet Union under Joseph Stalin wanted Eastern Europe to follow communism, while the Western Allies fought to promote democracy and capitalism. Suspicion replaced cooperation, trust dissolved. And the Cold War began, a silent war fought not with bombs and bullets, but with pressure, propaganda, and intimidation. Berlin, standing at the very intersection of East and West, became the symbolic battleground. In 1948, the tension exploded. Stalin cut off every road, rail line, and supply route leading into West Berlin. Overnight, more than 2 million people were trapped without food, coal, or medicine. Many feared the city would starve. But instead of surrendering, the United States and its allies launched an extraordinary answer: the Berlin Airlift. For almost a year, planes landed every few minutes, bringing flour, milk, fuel, everything the city needed to survive. Children watched in excitement as pilots dropped chocolates attached to tiny parachutes. The airlift became a symbol of hope and resistance, and the Soviets finally backed down. But the damage was done. Berlin was no longer simply a city. It was the front line of a global ideological struggle. As the years passed, West Germany rebuilt rapidly. Its economy surged, its cities grew modern and vibrant, and it became a shining example of freedom and prosperity. East Germany, controlled by the Soviet Union, took a darker path. The government monitored its citizens closely, controlling the media, the schools, and nearly every aspect of everyday life. The secret police, the Stasi, built one of the most extensive surveillance networks in history. People lived with the fear that anyone, even a friend or a family member, might secretly report them to the authorities. And yet, there was one weakness that the East German government could not hide. West Berlin sat right in the middle of East Germany, a window into a different world, a world of freedom, open speech, brighter lights, better jobs, and hope. People in the East could see it, hear about it, and even travel there for a while. Between 1949 and 1961, nearly 3 million East Germans escaped to the West. Entire families left everything behind. Doctors, teachers, engineers. The East was losing its future. Every day, hundreds took a train to Berlin, walked across a street, or simply stepped off a tram and into freedom. And with every person who left, the communist leadership felt the ground beneath them weaken. They needed a solution. Something drastic, something powerful, something final. On the warm night of August 13th, 1961, while Berlin slept, thousands of soldiers, police officers, and workers moved into the streets. They unrolled barbed wire, tore up roads, blocked every crossing, and cut through the city like a knife. By sunrise, Berliners woke up to see their streets sliced apart. Mothers found themselves separated from their daughters. Husbands separated from wives. Even buildings that stood across the border were suddenly enemies of the state. Windows facing West Berlin were bricked up, doors sealed shut. Some people reacted instinctively, without thinking. A young man jumped from his second-floor apartment into the west. A woman tied a rope between two buildings and swung across to freedom before soldiers could stop her. A family drove their car straight through the wire before guards had time to fire, but others weren't so lucky. Many were caught, beaten, or shot as they tried to escape. Within days, the barbed wire began transforming into concrete. Watchtowers rose above the skyline. Armed guards patrolled with rifles and dogs, and searchlights lit the night like a stage. In just a short time, the Berlin Wall became one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world. For many East Germans, life changed overnight. A simple walk to work could vanish. A job on the other side of the city was suddenly gone forever. Friends became unreachable. Family gatherings disappeared. Even attending a funeral or wedding across the border became impossible. You could see West Berlin from certain streets. Bright lights, lively cafes, music. But you could never reach it. Behind the wall, the death strip emerged, a wide area filled with sand to show footprints, anti-vehicle trenches, electric fences, tripwires, guard dogs, and soldiers under orders to shoot anyone attempting to flee. Over the next 28 years, more than 140 people would lose their lives trying to cross that narrow stretch. Some drowned in the river, some were shot, some were caught in the barbed wire and left to die as the world watched helplessly from the western side. Each death was a story cut short. Yet people did not stop trying. Their bravery turned into legend. Some dug long, narrow tunnels for months straight. Some hid inside modified cars with secret compartments. One family stitched together a homemade hot air balloon and floated silently over the wall at night. Others disguised themselves as diplomats or forged documents so perfectly that even border guards were fooled. Every successful escape became a spark of hope. Every failed one became a tragic reminder of the price of freedom. Meanwhile, on the western side, life flourished. West Berlin became a vibrant, artistic, rebellious, and free city, a living symbol of resistance. It was a strange place, surrounded by walls, yet filled with energy. Musicians, writers, and activists turned it into a cultural hub. Graffiti artists covered the western face of the wall with bright colors and political messages, transforming it into a canvas of protest. Leaders from around the world visited this divided city. In 1963, U.S. President John F. Kennedy stood in front of the wall and declared, "Ich bin ein Berliner," telling the world that the people of Berlin were not alone. In 1987, Ronald Reagan addressed the Soviet leader directly with words that echoed through history. "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." But the wall was not waiting for speeches. By the late 1980s, things were shifting across Eastern Europe. People were rising up against decades of oppression. Economies were failing. Confidence in communist governments was collapsing. The Soviet Union itself was changing under Mikhail Gorbachev, who introduced reforms like glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring. Suddenly, the once unshakable Eastern Bloc seemed fragile. In East Germany, protests began to grow. Thousands marched peacefully, holding candles, chanting for freedom, and demanding open borders. The government tried to intimidate them, but the world was watching. The people refused to step back. Their courage became stronger than their fear. Then, on the night of November 9th, 1989, something incredible happened. Not through grand political strategy, but through a simple mistake. A confused East German official announced on live television that travel restrictions were being lifted, effective immediately. The message spread like wildfire. People rushed to the border crossings, shouting, chanting, demanding to cross. The guards had no instructions, no preparations, and no idea what to do against a peaceful wave of humanity. As the crowds grew, the guards finally caved. One man stepped aside, then another, and suddenly the gates opened. What followed was a moment of pure emotion. People ran across the border laughing, crying, screaming in disbelief. Strangers hugged strangers. Families reunited after decades. Young people climbed onto the wall, dancing, cheering, breaking off pieces of it with hammers and chisels. Television cameras recorded a moment the world never expected to witness in their lifetime: the fall of the Berlin Wall. And with that fall, the Cold War began to fade. Within a year, East and West Germany reunited. The wall that once divided families became a memory, preserved in museums and small segments along the streets of modern Berlin. Today, tourists walk where guards once stood, and children play where soldiers once watched for escapees. The wounds of division remain visible, not in concrete, but in history and in the stories of those who lived through it. But the lesson the wall leaves behind is timeless. It reminds us that no matter how high the barrier, no matter how strong the concrete, or how strict the orders, human beings will always look for freedom. They will always push toward light, even in the darkest of times. The Berlin Wall stood for 28 years, but it could not break the human spirit. Because walls are built with fear, and humanity is built with hope. If you liked this story, hit like, share, and subscribe. Tell me which legend story you want next.